Another great show today, guys. We got a great guest lined up. We got Eliot Crist joins us to talk about some secrets to winning Week 1 in DFS. So stay tuned. This is not a show you want to miss.
Fantasy football, you dealing with the best. Keep it hype, authentic, this ain't nothing like the rest. With the Armchair Fantasy Show podcast, give advice for all the listeners to improve your stats. Yeah, we live on GoingFor2.com. Tuesdays and Fridays, this is what you want. Talking dynasties and daily drafts, and we just getting started, that ain't even the half. Yeah, so go ahead, tell your friends to join. Going for two, cause no one remembers the extra point. Hey, GoingFor2.com, the Armchair Fantasy Show.
What's going on, guys? All right, welcome to episode 95 of the Armchair Fantasy Show. I'm your host, of course, Jeff Lambert. You can follow me on Twitter at JeffLambert77. We're coming at you live every Friday and Tuesday night on Facebook, Periscope, and YouTube, and syndicated, of course, on all major podcast networks. I'm here, as always, with my co-host, Mr. Ryan Steerfoss. Ryan, how you doing tonight, man?
Hey, fantastic. It's football season. We have preseason. We have college starting this week.
Got some real football to talk about. Real football to talk about, finally.
I'm ecstatic about it.
Good stuff. And also, we have tonight joining us from the sorry, I can't pronounce the name. TheQuantEdge.com. We have Eliot Crist. Eliot, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm like you guys. I'm excited that we're real close to real football. College football is back this weekend, so I'm doing fantastic.
Great stuff. Hey, Eliot, tell us a little about yourself a little bit. Tell us about the Quant Edge and how long you've been doing it, and just kind of how you got into the game.
Yeah, so I mean, this is year number 2 for TQE. We just launched our new website, DFS and sports betting tools and content, optimizers, wide receiver, cornerback matchups, injury tool. This year we're launching dynamic rankings, weekly matchups, pace tool, game script tools, premium membership chat, all that good stuff at thequantedge.com. I've been in the fantasy community probably for 3.5-4 years now. Originally started with PFF, worked for 4 Power Hour, NDT Scouting, Bleacher Report. So it's been a long journey, but I'm really excited to kind of do my own thing for thequantedge.com and kind of shape the content the way I think is going to help people out the most, and shape tools to make them easy for people to understand and do a lot of research that used to take hours that now can take minutes.
Nice.
I love the receiver cornerback tool, matchup tool.
I appreciate that.
That's fantastic.
We tried to add a little bit to it this year to do more by alignment as well and then you can uncheck and check weeks. So if you just want to understand like what the last 4 weeks look like, you can do that. And you can sort custom ranges. So if you want to see, maybe X player was out weeks 8 through 12, you can check out how that impact they lined up and their targets and all that.
Nice. That sounds awesome. I haven't actually had a chance to check it out too much yet, but I've heard some good things. I know a bunch of guys that are in my my DFS chats have talked about it. So good stuff y'all doing over there. Explain the name to me, the Quant Edge. What does that exactly mean? How did you come up with that name?
So quantitative analytics. So essentially, aside from the content guys, what we have is we have multiple quants from Ivy League schools that have developed models to come up with projections and come up with betting models. So it's meant to be the quantitative edge. So we kind of shortened it out to something that would also sound good when you abbreviate to 3 letters for TQE. That's got a nice little ring to it.
Definitely.
And basically, we want to let people know that math is our core offering for people, and tool-based, quantitative-based is what the Quant Edge is all about. Nice.
And you're rocking the TQE hat there, man. I love it.
Yeah. I once you said video, I realized I had to throw it on.
That's good stuff. I love it. All right, guys. So we got a packed show tonight, so we're gonna go ahead and just jump right into it here. But before we get into the news and notes, I want to quickly go over our contest that we got running right now for DraftKings. It's a charity contest. It's for Week 1 only. It's free to join. Donations are optional but encouraged. Basically, just go to GoingFor2.com/charity. You can sign up there. All the money that we raise is going to go to the Scott Fishbowl's charity, the FantasyCares.net. We've got, I think we got $750 raised since the last time I checked there. So good stuff. So keep that coming, guys. Sign up. Like I said, it's free. We're taking up donations through October 31st. The link will be live right up until lock of the first game of Sunday. So You got time to join, so please go to GoingFor2.com/charity and join that. Let's get into the news and notes.
News and notes from around the league.
All right, Ryan, we'll go to you first here on this one. Mr. AB, I know you're there in Pittsburgh and all this drama he's got with his helmet still going on to this day. Talk about what's going on in Pittsburgh right now.
I mean, Pittsburgh's just taking their victory lap right now, man. There's everyone in the news talks about that more than the actual Steelers can. But it's crazy. But I'm not really worried about it anymore. Like, it's almost to the point where it doesn't even feel real. So it's just going to blow over. It's going to be one of those things you're going to, I think, months down the line, like, remember the AB thing? And that's it. I don't think anything's going to happen with it anymore. I wouldn't be surprised if HBO was paying them.
Yeah, that's a good point. What are your thoughts on this AB situation here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm more worried about his feet, honestly. If his feet are okay, I think he'll be fine. You know, at the end of the day, we're talking about the man would be walking away from $30 million.
Yeah,
if we've learned something about Antonio Brown, he's about his money.
Yep.
I don't think that's what he wants to do. His agent's fighting it. He returned to practice today. I mean, he's no doubt about it, a head case. I mean, I think the thing I care most about is the fact that he came in with a painted helmet that he did himself. I really want to see the painted helmet to see Antonio Brown's arts and craft skills. But I'm not that worried about it, honestly. You know, I know he's dropped a round or two in best ball. I think it's worth taking a shot at him, especially when he falls to the fourth round. That's kind of the way I'm looking at the situation right now, because I fully anticipate that he's going to play and be a major cog in that Raiders offense. Yeah,
I think I'm with you. I think when it comes down to week one, he'll be there no matter what. And I think if you can get a value right now, whether it's in redraft, dynasty, Ryan just talked before the podcast here, a couple of guys that made some trades, and it sounds like you can buy him pretty low right about now. So that's something you may want to look at doing. I think, Ryan, what was one of the trades you had? You said D.D. Westbrook in a third or something like that.
It was D.D. in a first.
D.D. in a first for AB. Yeah, that's
it was a 3-person trade. The other person got person who gave up AB got that back though.
Gotcha. Yeah. See, that's buying them pretty low there, I think. All right, we'll stick with the troubled wide receiver theme and go with Mr. Josh Gordon. Of course, he's now back. He's been reinstated. What are your thoughts on Josh Gordon, Eliot?
Yeah, I mean, I think Josh Gordon really helps Tom Brady. I think Josh Gordon, in the tier that he's going to end up around in that wide receiver 25 to 30 range, has the highest ceiling. I'd probably take him right after Robbie Anderson, but he absolutely does have a zero floor. He's back, but this is an addiction, right? And I know a lot of people make light of the situation, but it's a very real thing he's battling every day. And we've seen the last time he came back, he took the step away because he felt like it was too much.
Yep.
It's really tough to analyze. I got a ton of exposure to him in best ball back in when he was round 18 guy for his upside. I'll take shots on him here and there. I think he's a good DFS player. Honestly, that's kind of the way I'm looking at it, where I don't have to rely on him throughout the course of the season because I'm not 100% sure that I can.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I think he's definitely a good best ball. And if you got him a couple months ago when we weren't sure if he's coming back at all, you got a great value on him. I think his value is rising now, of course, from this news. Ryan, what are your thoughts on Gordon, and are you buying or selling if you've got him right now?
I'm kind of just holding, honest. I don't have any shares of myself in anything but best ball, but if I had him in redraft dynasty, or if I had dynasty redraft, I'm probably selling now because the hype's high, but I don't know where, like you said, there's no floor whatsoever for him.
Yep.
That was probably the best way to put it. It's a lot to gamble on. I don't know if I'm taking him in the fourth, but it depends where he falls to in drafts.
Yeah.
And how I build my team.
Yep, agreed 100%. I think if he's going to fall down pretty late, I think he's definitely a value to buy. But his value has risen quite a bit over this news, obviously.
I love it for Brady, though.
And just kind of staying with the Patriots here and receivers, Jacoby Myers has been lighting it up in preseason right now. And, they got N'Keal Harry there. Of course, now Josh Gordon is back. Jacoby Myers is lighting it up. Does this carry over to the preseason, you think, Ryan? You think Myers is the real deal?
You mean to the regular season?
To the regular season, sorry.
Man, there's a lot of guys there. There's a lot of mouths to feed, and it's going to take a long time to figure out. If you pick him up maybe last round of the draft's a flyer, it could be worth it. But I think his success could depend a lot about Josh Gordon's.
Yep.
Down the line.
What about you, Elliot? What do you think of Jacoby Myers? I heard that he had a first-round grade until he had some off-the-field issues. Are you buying Jacoby Myers anywhere?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of with you guys that the last round I've taken him in a couple of best balls, some stabs, but even in best case scenario, he's going to be the fourth option in the passing game. Edelman is going to be one, Gordon and White are the next two, and he's going to be competing with N'Keal Harry for snaps.
Yep.
I really think Harry is the guy whose value just completely bottoms out with Josh Gordon coming back if he plays. He's the guy that people were really excited about because of his rookie profile, and then he goes to a Patriots team where it looked like there were a ton of targets vacated. But if Gordon ends up as a wide receiver 1 with Julian Edelman seeing 10 to 12 targets and James White's 5 to 7 or 8 a game, it's going to really limit Harry and Myers' upside on a week-to-week basis, outside of obviously spike plays. Yeah,
100% agree. I think they become like boomer bust, best ball kind of plays. They may get a touchdown and that big play every once in a while, but I think overall, if you're looking at a full season value, I think it takes a hit for sure. All right, let's move over to some of these quarterbacks here. We got 2 quarterbacks to talk about. Case Keenum is likely the Week 1 starter over Haskins for the Redskins, and then looking at Marcus Mariota, word is that he's on a short leash now that Tannehill's there. Ryan, these 2 quarterbacks, talk about them a little bit in Week 1.
I mean, either one surprised me. Case Keenum, if he starts Week 1, it's going to be just like we saw last year with all 5 rookie quarterbacks. They're picked in the first round. You can't leave him on the bench forever. He might make it 5-6 weeks, but I can't picture the Redskins winning enough games where the fans are clamoring for Haskins to come in if that's the case. And I'm not betting on any Washington quarterback to start in fantasy early on, so I'm okay with waiting on that. And Mariota and Tannehill thing, they're both going to be guys, if they're stream, I guess you can stream whoever is your quarterback that week for them if you're desperate, but they're planning on running the ball, and neither of those QBs bring something that I'm excited about.
Yeah, I think with the 2 of them, it's almost like 6 of one, half dozen of another. Basically, they're basically the same quarterback in a way. What about you, Elliot, on these 2 quarterbacks here, Case Keenum, and then, of course, with Haskins, too, not starting, is that going to affect the outlook of Haskins going forward?
I mean, I think Haskins will start at some point. I mean, Case Keenum's biggest problem is that he's Case Keenum. He's not very good.
Good point.
And looking at the Redskins' offense in general, we're talking about Quinn and Richardson and McLaren and Reed, however long he's healthy. It's not exactly the best of the best weapons out there for him. Honestly, I think. If Haskins starts, I think it bumps up McLaren, but that's kind of the guy that I'd be most interested in. For the Titans, I think Marcus Mariota is going to keep the job, but ultimately neither guy is someone I'm interested in fantasy.
Yeah.
They're not the quarterback position is so deep this year. It's probably 23 deep with Sam Darnold at quarterback 23 in ADP right now. Where if it's a single quarterback league, which are mostly what people are doing at tends to be more dynasty. These guys really shouldn't be in consideration anyway. And in best ball, if you're not going to be guaranteed to start the whole season, I'm going to avoid you. So, they're low volume offenses, they're bad teams, and they're quarterbacks that aren't going to score much. Honestly, from a fantasy perspective, I don't want to say I don't care, but I really don't care. I mean, honestly, it may be a week in DFS if Haskins or Tannehill gets a start and they're stone cold min price. That's probably the only time I would look at these guys this year.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I don't think either one of them offer any kind of upside. Keenum, even Haskins to that point, I don't think offers too much upside either. Avoiding them all pretty much in pretty much every fantasy type of thing, whether it be DFS, Dynasty, Redraft, it doesn't matter. I'm not touching them, and I think it hurts the passing options there as well. I think Corey Davis, isn't as good as Corey Davis could be. I don't think A.J. Brown's gonna have a big rookie season with Mariota there. McLaurin, like you mentioned, is a big play guy, and him and Haskins had some history, I think, in college. But even that, if Haskins starts, I don't know if I'm going to go with the Haskins-McLaurin stack in DFS unless it's like dirt cheap. All right, let's move over to Mr. Holdout, Mr. Ezekiel Elliott. There's some news here where Jerry Jones kind of made a tongue-in-cheek joke about Zeke who, and the news came out after that Zeke and his agent weren't impressed with this. What do you think of this news, Ryan?
And they paid Jalen Smith today, $65 million?
Yep.
Man, I feel like that shouldn't have been said just because of the fact that kind of has what happened with Bell last year when it went down is when his line started talking bad about him.
Yep.
it makes me really worried. I have no idea where I'd take Zeke this year. Probably, maybe at the turn, but even then, I'm getting a little worried. And I like Tony Pollard right now as a later pick, but he's starting to climb up in ADP too. I think I've heard him in the 11th round now. I like what he brings to the team. I think he has value outside of just being a handcuff, so I have no problem getting him. But if he keeps moving up in value, I might shy away a little bit more.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that as well. I think Zeke has fallen. I think the draft that I did, it was right before the news actually broke. He was at the 108 already, and now we got this, this situation with Jerry Jones, the owner saying this publicly. He's dropping even more now. He's probably down to the 111, 112. What about you, Elliot? What are your thoughts on Zeke?
Yeah, I mean, Jerry Jones just came out today and said, I've earned the right to make jokes about Zeke. I mean, Zeke's not exactly been the model citizen off the field. He's given the Cowboys a lot of headaches. So I think Jerry might be getting a little tired of it. I think they do want to pay Zeke, but ultimately he may be fourth on the totem pole behind Dak and behind Amari Cooper. This whole thing was supposed to be resolved by August 6th because that's when he lost his year of free agent eligibility. Once it went past that, there's a chance he legit holds out for a long time. Now, you hear 2 days ago he's on a flight back from Cabo, and then you hear Jerry make those comments. It seems to be all over the place. Personally, Tony Pollard's my highest owned best ball running back back in the days of the 18th round. I really hope Zeke sits out the entire year.
No, yeah.
But I really think when it comes to these situations, it's a complete guessing game. I really think that's the only way you can address it. And I think for Zeke's risk right now, I want to take him in the second round, probably after that strong tier of wide receivers with the risk that's associated with him right now.
Yep, 100% agree with that as well. All right, let's move quickly to these last couple here. We got two quarterbacks that have just recently struggled mightily in preseason. Kyler Murray, after looking good in week one, struggled mightily in this last game. And then Jimmy G just looked lost. He looked terrible. I think he went 1 for 6 for 0 yards and threw an interception. He threw as many completions to their team as he did to his own team. Looked terrible. Ryan, what are your thoughts on these two quarterbacks going into the season?
I'm not really panicked on it yet. They're both going to be guys who are going to probably put up huge weeks because they have high-paced offenses, weapons around them, and are going to be in teams with shootouts, especially Arizona. I mean, it's a preseason game for Kyler. It was his second start ever. He went week one of preseason. Everybody thought he was the second coming, and now everyone's panicked.
Yep, it's amazing what he can do.
He brings a rushing ability, so he gives you that there. And they're not showing their whole offense. I'm not super worried about either one. And Jimmy G's just getting back from being hurt. He has a serious injury, and it takes some time to get used to the pass rush again, pressure. So I'm not panicked on it yet, and I'll probably take advantage of it if I can of somebody else panicking.
Yep, agreed 100%. Elliot, what are your thoughts on Kyler Murray and Jimmy G? Oh, I think we lost Elliot there. Let's see if we can get him back. Oh,
I'm back.
All right, you're back.
I'm back.
What are your thoughts on Kyler Murray and Jimmy G struggling in preseason?
Yeah, I mean, Kyler Murray, did he look good? No. Am I worried? No. Cliff Kingsbury talked a lot about that they're not rolling out any of the real offense during the preseason. They're not doing the air raid. And quite frankly, Kyler Murray doesn't need to be a good NFL quarterback this year to be a good fantasy asset.
Good point.
They're still going to run a ton of plays. He's still going to run around a ton. And they're still going to take a ton of shots downfield. And that's exactly what I'm looking for out of my quarterbacks. I'm buying on the dip. With Jimmy G's struggles, I mean, he looked really bad. The first time he saw pressure, he basically just kind of chucked it and done. I mean, that was his reaction. Ultimately, I really think we're buying a Kyle Shanahan offense with Jimmy G. There are other guys in that range that I tend to have preferred to go. He tends to just be a guy that if I get George Kittle, I'm willing to stack him with. But, I'm not overly excited about Jimmy G to begin with this year. I'm not going to – it's not fair to ignore Kyler Murray's and, really focus on Jimmy G's struggles. But I'm just, so not much has changed for me, but I'm high on Kyler Murray this year and I'm low on Jimmy G.
Yep, I tend to agree. You can see I'm wearing the Niners hat here, so I kind of followed that game kind of closely. I was at work, so I couldn't see the game, but from what I heard and what I saw, it wasn't good. But again, he's been off for almost the entire year with the ACL. First time he ever saw pressure. maybe he struggled there, but I have heard he's been struggling a little bit in camp as well. I think he had a practice, against the Broncos, a joint practice where he threw 5 straight interceptions on 5 straight plays. So a little bit nervous as far as being a fan, but in fantasy, I think I have got him ranked outside the top 20 already, even as a fan of Jimmy G. And Kyler Murray, I think, will be fine because I think not only are they not running their full offense there, I doubt they've kind of taken the reins off of him and say, okay, run the ball if you need to. They're probably telling him, do not run, throw it away, whatever, take a sack, because they don't want to get him hurt. So I think they're going to wait till they get to the season before they sort of let him loose out there. So I agree. I think Murray will be fine. All right, we got a ton of questions flying in off of Facebook here, and I got some that we've kind of written down from earlier that I want to go ahead and get to. We'll kick off the first one here with Alex Juarez from Facebook. He wants to know, this is going back to DFS here, is how important is the home field advantage? And then, is there a such thing as a revenge narrative? Does that actually work in the NFL, Eliot? Oh, I think we lost Eliot again. Ryan, we'll go to you then. What do you think of that in DFS? Do you think a home field advantage works? And then the revenge narrative, talk about that a little bit.
I don't believe in revenge narrative at all. I mean, it's just one of those talking points, I think, because, players move enough where there's always revenge narrative. But home field advantage, I think, depends on type of year, where they're playing. Like, if you're playing in Buffalo in the winter, that's a home field advantage for them. But if you're talking like a dome team or just a normal in regular season early on, I don't think it's as big of a deal.
Right. Yeah, I agree 100%. And what about the revenge narrative? What do you think of that?
I don't believe in it.
Yeah. No.
It's an ESPN talking point.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we write up in content. Revenge narrative. So and so is coming back to his hometown. He wants to show out, but I think it works more in the NBA than it does in the NFL because the NFL you rely on so many people to kind of get you the ball. Whether you're a running back, you got to get the carries. Whether it's getting the blocks, receiver has to get throwing the football. Quarterbacks, obviously, they got to work the game plan. So it doesn't quite work as well. In the NBA, it's a little bit different because you got the ball in your hands. You can kind of do what you want with it. But I agree. I think the revenge narrative is not something that I'm looking for in the NFL. And home field advantage, I think, only matters if the home field is a weather stadium. If you're playing in December and it's snowing out or whatever, I think home field advantage might be a thing there. But overall, I don't really look at that when I'm building my rosters at all.
I would say that I completely agree with you on the NBA side of things. That when NBA players are playing, you're looking for guys that are caring in February. So if they have like a little revenge narrative, they want to kind of stick it to their old team. I think that's a guy that might try a little bit harder. In the NFL, there's only 16 games. These guys are going all out every week.
Yep.
Now, sure, could they get an extra target? Absolutely. But I'm not changing my entire narrative around it. Home field advantage, I think it depends on the team and the player. So I think that defenses, I prefer my defenses to be at home. The crowd noise and all that stuff gives you a little bit of an extra jump on pass rush situations. Certain guys historically have performed much better at home, and domes as well tend to lead to more points. It's a better surface. There's no possibility of weather, but in general, outside of defenses, I really don't want to change my whole. And it can be like a tiebreaker. If like the first other 6 tiebreakers are
right. It's like that final one, like when you've got down to like nothing, basically. It's the last tiebreaker. I agree 100%. Another one we got here from Twitter at the Fantasy G Pod. What's the most amount of players that you'll stack from one game? So that's a big big DFS strategy is stacking a game, especially in GPPs. How many players is too much, Eliot?
I think anything over 5 starts to become a lot. So I think you could play a quarterback and then one of his or 2 of his combination of running back, wide receiver, and tight end, and you can run it back with 2 guys on the other team. I think even if you do that, you need a lot going right in that game. You kind of need a Rams-Chiefs kind of game,
right.
Or at least I don't know,
Saints
50 points in a game.
Yeah, Saints Rams is pretty good.
And once you go more than that, man, you're going. In my opinion, you're going crazy.
Yeah, agreed 100%. Because you figure if you already got 5 guys, there's only 9 guys in your roster. That's it's too much already. I think 5 is probably the cutoff point, and that's if it's a really high scoring game, like you said. All right, what about this last one we got here from Fantasy Beast on Twitter? Just talking about the Cardinals' offense in DFS in general, your level of confidence, and if you had to choose one between Kyler Murray and Carson Wentz, who's your cash game QB out of those two, Elliot?
So, I mean, I think it's really early to make definitive suggestions for week 1 of DFS. But if the slate was tomorrow, I would take Carson Wentz. So I really like Kyler Murray this year. I actually think the Lions are one of the worst matchups for the Cardinals for 2 reasons. One, they're going to really slow the game down. They're going to run the ball a ton against a Cardinals team that struggles to run. And 2, the Lions were the best team in the NFL last year in terms of containing running quarterbacks. You look at guys like Cam Newton, Mitch Trubisky, Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott, and Josh Allen. None of them cracked 20 yards. They play contain. It's their entire defensive structure is designed to keep a quarterback in the pocket. So I for that reason, I like Carson Wentz over Kyler Murray. Also, I mean, Wentz is dirt cheap going up against a bad Redskins team with all the weapons in the world. That Deshaun Jackson signing is a huge deal. I think he's an excellent cash quarterback. If I could add in Lamar Jackson to the situation, who's just a few $100s more against a bad Dolphins team, they're going to run a ton of plays this year, and he never scored less than 16 points. That's a pretty good cash game quarterback as well. Nice.
And I know, Ryan, you kind of got happy on that there with Lamar Jackson talk because you got someone on here supporting your boy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, any positive Lamar Jackson talk, I'm all for.
Have you looked at the week 1 slate at all, Ryan, yet? I know it's still early, but I'm just curious if you looked at it.
I looked at a little bit of it. I don't have it in front of me, though. But, yeah, how do you, actually, the one person I was actually going to bring up, we're bringing up later, so.
Okay.
I know we have some of those on there.
We'll wait on that then. We got a bunch of questions here, too, on Facebook that are coming through live. Going back to the AB thing, one of the guys wants to know with this situation with AB leaving there, what's the value of James Washington? Ryan, we'll go to you since you're in Pittsburgh. They got a couple guys there: James Washington, Dante Moncrief, and then they got Deontay Johnson too, the rookie there. What are your thoughts on James Washington? What are you hearing over there in Pittsburgh?
It depends who you listen to on how they feel about James Washington. I really like James Washington. I like what he brings there, and I think we've kind of seen what Moncrief can do and have a little bit more confidence either way, but I like Washington's upside. I think they're going to use him as a deep threat to offset Juju, and I think he's going to be in that old Martavius Bryant role they used to have. Matt Williamson's been the guy who's been Steelers camp who's really talked him up and said he's looked great. He's one of the guys I'd normally trust for stuff like that. So I have a few dynasty shares of him. I like him as a player, but it'll be one of those things that's kind of wait and see what their starting rosters look like.
Agreed. What about you, Elliot? Are you a big James Washington supporter?
I really like Washington's skill set. Obviously, he really struggled as a rookie, has looked good in his limited time in the preseason. I think what he does well is get deep, and the Steelers need that role on this team. And like Ryan said, Dante Moncrief is a guy that for some reason we buy every year, and every year he disappoints.
Yep.
I understand he's now playing in a great offense, but he was also Andrew Luck's number 2 wide receiver for a long time. And I know he's a 4.4 guy, and he's a big, prolific athlete on, the track. But on the NFL field, I feel like he's not really been that type of player. Those kind of guys I'm not really. Donald's probably the wide receiver 2 on this team.
Do you guys remember when Moncrief was a second-round pick in ADP?
Yeah.
Back after that first year?
Yep, I do remember that because he had a pretty big end of the season, I believe, and that kind of pumped him up a little bit for the following year. Yep, pretty crazy.
Do you remember when Terrell Pryor 2 years ago worked his way into the 3rd round and was out of the league like 3 weeks later?
Yeah, that is true. He's back, though. He's somewhere. Was he playing in Miami, I think, right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I tell you what, man, he's the best high school football player I've ever seen in person.
Yeah. He just won't go away, man. He just won't die. But, yeah, definitely. All right, I got one last one here from Jason Aguirre on Facebook. He's talking about DFS again. And his question is simply, does defense matter? Meaning, when you're looking at a player and you're trying to pick, between him, and you're looking at the defense at all. Well, Elliot, we'll go to you first.
Yes. I know this was a huge thing on Twitter last year, and Josh Hermsmeyer is as smart as anyone in the industry. And honestly, the really funny thing is people were saying the same thing. They were just phrasing it differently. Does defense matter? Does the difference between 13th and 17th overall matter? Probably not. Does the difference between 1 and 32 matter? Absolutely. Like, is it easier to get open against me than it is Jalen Ramsey? Yes,
Probably.
it is. Like, this is just like, I mean, trust me, I'm big, slow, and white. I'm not a good corner, but but in general, like they're different defenses funnel targets to different areas of the field, to different players. Game plans, all that stuff. Defenses absolutely matter. They matter a lot more in the extremes in terms of the top 8 and bottom 8, more so than the difference between 13th and 15th.
Yeah, that's a good point there. What about you, Ryan? Are you looking at defenses at all when you're playing DFS?
I mean, I kind of agree with what he says on that, but a lot of it's matchup-wise in DFS and going off who they're playing, who's hot, and all that. But no, I'm kind of with him. I'm not going to buy a bottom-tier defense who's going to get 50 points on them. There's a huge difference between that and the bottom or top. Yeah,
there's a tool that I use, and you just go into your matchups, and I know we talked about it at the top of the show on the Quint Edge how they have that matchup tool with the cornerback receiver, and that's something that I used. I haven't used it from the Quant Edge before, but Mike Clay puts one out as well. And I use that quite a bit because you will see quite a bit of a difference between the number 1 cornerback versus number 2 cornerback, and that's the guy you really want to target sometimes is the one going to the number 2 quarterback. I think there was a game way back when Sherman still played for the Seahawks, and they played the Packers, and Rodgers did not target the entire right side of the field for the entire game because that's the side that Sherman lined up on. And I think those are kind of things you got to look for in DFS a little bit. Some of those things that you don't if you don't dig deep, you don't find those kind of things.
You know what's hilarious about that game? Do you remember who the receiver was they put out there?
Was it Jordy Nelson?
It was Devontae Adams.
Devontae Adams
was the sacrificial lamb because they didn't think he was good enough. So they just threw him out on Richard Sherman and worked with Jordy and Randall Cobb.
That's right, yep.
It's amazing how far we've come. Could you imagine just saying, we're going to put Devontae Adams at the side of the field and we're not going to throw to him once, we're just going to ignore him?
Yeah. It's crazy how far he's come. Because, at one point he was almost considered a bust, and now he's like one of the best receivers in the football right now. That's crazy. All right, guys, let's take a quick commercial break here. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about Week 1 DFS from a bird's eye view, and then we'll play a little bit of Spade or Fade, so hang tight.
In the unpredictable world of fantasy sports, when all hope seems lost, and chaos and confusion rule, one hero will rise. And change everything. GoingFor2.com. Because no one remembers the extra point.
All right, guys, welcome back. I want to mention one more time that the DFS charity contest that we got going on for Week 1. Just go to GoingFor2.com/charity to join. It's free to join. Donations are optional, and all proceeds will go to the FantasyCares.net charity. So please do that. It's still about 2 weeks, a week and a half left of the contest before we cut it off. So go to GoingFor2.com/charity. All right, let's look at a bird's eye view of Week 1 here. Just sort of glossing over it a little bit, Eliot. We'll go with you first here. At the question here is your top players for Week 1. Who are you looking at? Who do you think have the most exposure to in Week 1? Just by looking at it just quickly.
Like you said, it's very early, but there are a couple guys that seem to really stand out to me. I mean, Dalvin Cook. Before we even get into it, everyone is mispriced Week 1.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Yep, comes out so early. I agree.
Dalvin Cook, Kerryon Johnson, Curtis Samuel, Robert Woods, Evan Ingram if Sterling Shepard is out. There's a lot of guys. I mean, Lamar Jackson's a guy I'm probably gonna have exposure to. Chris Carson's in a great situation. Probably like him more on FanDuel than DraftKings, but if they're gonna pass to him more, like Austin Eckler, depending on the Melvin Gordon situation, Tony Pollard, depending on the Zeke situation. Those guys are 4,500 and Eckler's 5,500. Freeman's probably too cheap as well. I mean, I know the Vikings aren't a great matchup, but those are a couple guys that I really like. Because I always like to pay up at running back and then find the gems at wide receiver if I can.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm with that as well. And I love Ingram. You mentioned Ingram. He's one of my favorites for week 1. Like you said, especially if Sterling Shepard is out. I think his splits last year with OBJ and without OBJ was drastic. It was like 8 points with OBJ in the field and like 16 points without OBJ. So I love Ingram in week 1, and his price is pretty good on both sites. So definitely agree with you there. Are there any of that you're fading? Any guys that you don't like that you just avoid completely?
Yeah, I mean, Todd Gurley is a guy that I'm not paying top price for Todd Gurley at this point. If his role is going to go back 20%, I'm willing to wait and see on him. Le'Veon Bell is probably a guy that I'm not exactly excited to use against the Buffalo Bills. Joe Mixon is a guy that's probably too expensive in a bad situation. One other thing that I'd probably be interested in is potentially looking at a Chiefs stack against the Jacksonville Jaguars, because there's so many cheap guys. I think you could pay up and get almost a Mahomes, Kelsey, and Damian Williams, for example, and just basically try to capture every touchdown that team scores.
Nice.
Because I think that's going to be it's going to be very difficult a lot of weeks to fit a Chiefs stack, but in week 1 it's not, and I think it's a bit contrarian. So, I mean, honestly, I haven't ruled anyone out just yet, but Todd Gurley's the one guy for sure that I don't have much interest in right now.
Good deal.
Does that match up for the Chiefs for you at all, or no?
I mean, I think that's why they're going to be low owned. So, we saw them score against everybody last year.
That's true.
So, I mean, I think that's really what it is. I mean, Tyreek Hill is almost matchup proof, as good as Jalen Ramsey is, because he's just faster than everybody else. And the Jaguars don't cover the tight end, extremely well. And, the Chiefs offense, as good as the Jaguars defense is, the Chiefs offense can literally score against anybody.
Yep. In this case, defense doesn't matter. Hey, Ron, you got any questions for Eliot as far as week 1 goes?
Yeah, if Andrew Luck misses week 1, are you going to have some exposure to Jacoby Brissett?
No. On different weeks, I might, because I'm very big team pay down at quarterback. But again, because of the way there's so many pricing errors, I don't think I have to get too cute at quarterback in week 1.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the perfect way to answer that question, is because week 1 the pricing is so off that, if this is like week 5, week 6, week 7, and Brissett is minimum salary, it's a little bit different because then those quarterbacks are actually valued properly. But I think week 1 there's so many different options that you can beat. I don't think you're going to have to pay down that much at quarterback. You can pay down and still get a good one, whereas Brissett, as good as he looks in the preseason, I don't think he's going to be anything in the regular season that you want to own.
And that Chargers defense, I mean, I know Derwin James is out, but that's not exactly a defense you want to pick on either.
Exactly. And I think they're in LA, I believe, right?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah,
they
are.
They are. They're in LA, so that doesn't help you either for a young quarterback in a hostile environment like that. Are there any games looking at sort of Vegas totals and any games particularly that you're targeting that are going to be high scoring?
Panthers Rams, I think, is one. I mean, I really like that Panthers offense this year. Curtis Samuel is free. That drumbeat is getting louder and louder. He continues to look like the best player, and he's 4,200 on DraftKings. And we're talking about a guy that saw 8 or more targets in 7 of the last 8 games. So that's a game I really want to target. That's probably the top one. Atlanta, Minnesota has some appeal because of how bad Atlanta's defense has been, but Keanu Neal, Alford, and Deion Jones are back, and the Vikings defense is legit good. If Luck was playing, Chargers-Colts might be a better one. And then I think the other big one is 49ers, Tampa Bay Bucks, because you probably want to look at the Bucks in every game this year because they're not going to be able to run the ball. Their offense is all set up to take vertical shots, and their defense stinks.
Yeah, that's kind of how it was last year. It was basically play whoever's playing the Tampa Bay Bucks, because that's just going to be a high-scoring game. I agree 100% with that. And then, go ahead, Brian.
I'll say without showing your hand too much, is there any guys you think is going to have low ownership that you're going to have some solid exposure to?
It's so early for ownership. That it's tough for me to answer that question. I think the Chiefs stack will go under-owned, though at this point I'm not sure if people have thought enough to kind of get contrarian on that one yet. I think Lamar Jackson's going to go under owned. And I think he can always break a slate with his rushing upside. In terms of a couple pivots that might be interesting, like Matt Breida could end up getting 50% of the snaps in San Francisco as cheap exposure to that game.
I love your
3,900. It's another situation where I'm just kind of going through guys as I look now. Justice Hill is a guy that might be really low owned at 3,600 against the Dolphins, where he's looked phenomenal. And if he ends up playing 40% of the snaps and he hits one of those big plays, I think he could absolutely pay off that price tag. And if you played Justice Hill and, say, Curtis Samuel this week, you could basically just play everyone else as like a top salary guy.
That's a good point. Yeah, I'm going back to your Breida call. I love that call. Actually, I'm on record saying that Breida is actually going to play the Devontae Freeman role in this offense, and they brought Tevin Coleman in to play the Tevin Coleman role. Who else better to comp to Tevin Coleman than Tevin Coleman? So I think that Breida's going to be the guy there, I believe. I think that Shanahan's going to use him the same way he did the two backs in Atlanta, and I think that Breida's a great call. I've been buying him everywhere. I've been buying him since February in all of my best balls in my dynasty leagues, trying to buy him up because I think he's going to be a pretty good pick there.
He's been phenomenal, too. Yards per carry, explosive plays. He can do a ton. The biggest thing is that he looks like he dies every week, but then he comes back and he runs the ball 6 more times. So.
Yeah, that's one thing I said, too. I was like, because sometimes I'm at work on Sundays, and I'll just be watching, from my phone, basically, and I'll get a note saying, Breida's down with a knee injury, and I'm like, shit. And then I look back, he's like, he got 50 yards rushing, and I'm like, what the hell happened? I thought he was dead. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into some Spade or Fade real quick, guys.
Spade or Fade.
All right, so this is a segment that we do on my DFS podcast on Fridays usually. We do the Friday show during the season for DFS. I know it's early, and this is more just to get an idea of some of these guys. Obviously, it's way too early to make decisions on some of these guys, but I'm going to give you a player, Eliot, and I want you to tell me if he's a Spade, if he's going to have be in a lot of your lineups, or if he's a Fade and you're just avoid him altogether. The first guy we kind of talked about already, so I'm just going to skip over him. We're going to go to Kirk Cousins. He's 5,500 on DK, 7,400 on FanDuel, and he's playing Atlanta. What do you think of that play there?
Honestly, I think that he could have a solid game, but without his rushing upside and all the other quarterbacks priced in the same area, I think it's going to be a fade for me.
Agreed. I think Kirk Cousins, season-long wise, I think he's going to be good, bounce back season, but you're right with those prices the way they are. I think there's a few guys priced right around him that have that rushing upside.
Wentz is 100 more, right? Murray's in that area. Jackson's a few hundred more. I think this is a situation where these guys might be 1,000 more 2 weeks later.
Yep, agreed. All right, Ryan, which one you got for me?
I got Todd Gurley against Carolina.
Yeah, I'm going to go fade on that one.
I kind of knew that right before I answered that.
I just think that, that workload is going to come down. I think the public in general, because I talk about this a lot. I think there's a Twitter bubble, and I think we're all part of it, right? It's the absolute diehard guys, and we struggle to understand that, there's 7 million people that play DFS. There are a lot of people who are not involved in the Twitter stuff. And the general public, you see, like ESPN did their fantasy football marathon, and Todd Gurley went 9th overall. Wow. Todd Gurley's going to have a fair amount of ownership at that price, and I'm more than happy to fade it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think his price is a little bit better on FanDuel because FanDuel released their prices a little bit later than DraftKings did, so they adjusted for some of that stuff. DraftKings, I think he's still the top running back, I believe, whereas on FanDuel, I think he's like 430. Actually, he's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He's the 8th priced running back on FanDuel, so a little bit better value
on
there.
DraftKings.
He's what on DraftKings?
Fourth. He's fourth.
Yeah,
and FanDuel is so touchdown dependent anyway, and that's what you'd be playing them for.
Yeah, agreed, because they don't have the PPR side of things over there. All right, next one I got here is going to be Mr. OBJ and his new digs in Cleveland. What do you think of Mr. OBJ? He's 81 on DK, 82 on FanDuel, and they got Tennessee. Spade or fade?
Yeah, Spade. I think this is one of the top receivers week one. I know Adoree Jackson's a solid corner, but Odell Beckham is something else. and he actually has a quarterback that can complete a pass. So I think that's going to be really helpful for him this year. I know that's groundbreaking analysis that receivers are helped by quarterbacks who throw the ball accurately. But, I think honestly in Todd Monken's system, though every report is just Baker's feeding this guy the football and he cannot stop making plays. I think you're gonna see them roll out their shiny new toy in week 1.
Yeah, I agree. Did you see that Twitter video with him catching a one-handed pass between his legs?
Yeah, what's this? I don't even know what to say. I know I just stuttered there, but it's just because sometimes you see these videos and you're like, what? And then you see that he did the jugs machine afterwards, and he did 200 from a foot away, just snatching the ball one at a time.
Wow.
200 straight, and it's that dude's hands are unbelievable.
That's crazy. I didn't see that one.
I think we've forgotten, honestly, because of all the drama.
Yep.
How good Odell Beckham is.
Yep, 100% agree with that one. All right, Ryan, you got a Spade or fade?
I feel like they're going to try to prove a point that week 1 too with those guys.
Yeah, I agree. I think they did that even in preseason too. They played their guys in week 1 preseason just to sort of prove a point that this team's going to be really good. You got one?
Went right down the field.
Yeah, exactly. Went right down the field.
They went right down the field.
Yep.
Next one we have is Eric Ebron at the Chargers.
Eric Ebron fade in best ball, in redraft, in DFS, in everything. Complete fade for me for Eric Ebron this year. He's going to play. He played in every time that Jack Doyle played last year and was healthy. He was the backup tight end. He was tight end 2 on that team. In last week's preseason game, he played less snaps than Jack Doyle with the starters. I mean, he's the number 2 tight end on the team. He's, 4,100 is pretty cheap, but one of the guys you might ask me about here in a minute is 200 cheaper, and I think the better player and has the better role in the offense.
All right, we'll go ahead and ask about that. Mr. Hunter Henry, is he a Spade or fade for you?
Yeah, he's a Spade for me. I mean, I really think that Evan Ingram and Travis Kelce and George Kittle, just because I think this is a week where you can actually pay up for tight end because of all the values, are probably going to be 3 of my highest owned guys, but I think Hunter Henry is absolutely in play at that price tag. If all he needs is 1 touchdown to pay it off. Yep.
Nice. And I'm going to give you one more here. I know this haven't been released yet with prices, but I just want to get your thoughts on Antonio Brown week 1. Are you going to play him in any of your full, Thursday, Sunday, Monday slates? Are you playing Antonio Brown at all?
I don't know if I'll play him in the Thursday to Monday. He's definitely going to be on the radar for the primetime slate. That Monday night slate is one of my favorite because we've moved from primetime to showdown, unfortunately.
Right.
But they still have massive tournaments that Monday night, week 1. And, like we just talked about Odell Beckham, and I know it's a bit of a narrative, but I think they're going to force feed him that football and try to prove people wrong that it was worth the headache.
Yeah, I agree. I think that he'll be lower owned because of that. I think that actually may help him out a little bit. As far as if you're playing in there, you get that lower ownership. I mean, he'll still be higher ownership because it is showdown, and everybody's kind of high owned in the showdowns, but Antonio Brown will still be lower owned than I think he would have been if it wasn't for all this drama.
He's a guy that might be 35% owned, and if there wasn't drama, he might be 60 or 70% owned.
Agreed, 100%.
And 35% is actually pretty low in showdown.
It is, yeah.
People don't realize that. If you have a couple 35% guys and you can find one sub 20, you probably have a unique lineup.
Yep, agreed, 100%. Agreed. I love showdown. I actually played a bunch of showdown this preseason. I've done really well. I've been better at my showdown preseasons than I have on my full slate preseason games. So I'm kind of looking forward to that Monday night because you got 2 games basically you can play in that Monday night game. So good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, showdown in general, the 49ers game was, it was just play kickers and defense, and anyone who catches a pass is now the leading receiver for their team. Yep. But one of the things I love about showdown is if you can tell yourself you can start to build really good showdown teams. I see so many showdown lineups where the game has to go in 9 different directions for the lineup to be successful. Yep. I don't need to win all my showdowns, but if I tell myself a story and I hit on a couple stories throughout the year, that's how you get really big paydays in showdowns.
Yep, agreed. I had a really good showdown. I was trying to think. It was Pittsburgh and Tampa Bay, I believe. I played a showdown, and it was funny because I was
McDonald.
No, actually, it was the touchdown, the Big Ben kneeling down at the end of the game. So I was in second place, and the guy had Ben Roethlisberger. He kneeled down 3 straight times in victory formation, lost 2 yards, and moved me from second to first. So I was pretty excited about that one. I'm sure that guy was pissed about that.
That's amazing. That's first off, congrats to you. That's awesome. The Redskins Saints game was huge for TQE because everyone at TQE was all in on Traquan Smith at captain at min price. And then he ended up having 110 yards and 2 touchdowns.
2 touchdowns, yep.
And he was like 15% owned. And you got to play all the other studs. And it was just, you just started massacring everybody. So,
yep.
Showdown's one of those things where if you get things right, you can find yourself at the top pretty easily.
Pretty quickly, yep, definitely. All right.
Or you can find yourself at the top, and then there's 2 drives left, and then you end up with no money.
Exactly. That actually happened to me that Niners game because I had Austin Walker. He came up a yard short from scoring a touchdown. They take him out on the next play. They throw a pass to Kendrick Bourne, I believe. I was so pissed because that touchdown from Austin Walker would have put me. I had him in my captain at I forget, it was to 8% owned or something, and he was my captain that night, and I would have been sitting pretty, but. Instead, it was Kendrick Bourne. I dropped off pretty dramatically after that. So
I know we're trading horror stories here right now, but last year on FanDuel Showdown for Bears Seahawks Monday Night Football, I owned 0 Will Dissly, and he was 45% owned. He had 0 catches going into the final drive, and then I threw it to him 5 times. He ended up with 60 yards and a touchdown. And I went from up $5,000 to losing all $500 I had on the night. And I was like, that is only in Showdown can that happen, where one drive knocks you from $5,000 to $0.
That is absolutely true. Absolutely true. All right, we'll come to the end of the show here, guys. We're going to go ahead and do our Forgotten Fantasy Player.
Get ready for GoingFor2.com's Forgotten Fantasy Player of the Week.
All right, if you're new to the show, this is how we do this. We pick one player. We give our guests a chance to pick one player that we think that he's been forgotten about, a guy from the past that maybe won Eliot some money, or maybe he won him a championship in season-long leagues, or maybe he's just a guy that he thinks everybody forgot about. So who you got, Eliot, for your forgotten player?
You know what? I'm going to go with Lamont Jordan.
Nice.
That was one of my. I'm a Jets fan, so that was one of my favorite players growing up. And he spelled Curtis Martin, was a really good fantasy player for the Jets for 2 years. Ended up going to the Raiders. That's when he got all the hype, and then kind of completely fell off. So I think a lot of people have bad taste in their mouth with Lamont Jordan, but he was a really solid player for a couple of years for the Jets.
Yeah, I definitely remember him because I think I streamed him. I believe I forget the situation because it's been a while now, but I know I had him in some of my season-long leagues. When he did come in there and spell Curtis Martin a little bit. So. That's a good one. Pulling that one in deep there. I like that.
I haven't heard his name forever.
Yeah.
That's. I could have gone with a year or two ago, but I figured Lamont Jordan was. If we're going, throwback that trying to make people forget about someone, I thought that was a good one.
Yeah, that's definitely a good one. All right, Eliot, tell us where we can find you at on Twitter, and tell us a little bit about the Quant Edge before we get out of here.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on Twitter at Eliot Crist, 1L, 1T, no H in Crist. I apologize about the spelling. It was really not in my control. All my work is on thequantedge.com. One of the things we're really excited about this year is our brand new website, iOS app launching soon, all the content and tools that we have. But, for people that aren't ready to pay for it right away, we actually offer free week trials. Come in, check it out, see everything for yourself, and we're pretty convinced that you're going to think it's worth it.
Awesome. Good stuff. Ryan, where can we follow you at?
Follow me on Twitter at Ryan Searfoss at Fantasy FB Connect and everything going for 2.
All right. Good stuff, guys. Of course, I'm Jeff Lambert. You can follow me on Twitter at JeffLambert77. Find me here every Tuesday and Friday night during the season, guys. Have a good night.